Hi there. Today I'm going to be talking rules. So if you get into sailing racing, there are a set of rules that govern what you can do around the course. You can use them to your advantage. They're also there to avoid collisions and crashes. So this is going to be the first in hopefully a series of videos looking at the racing rules of sailing, not IRPCS, not collision regs, but the racing rules of sailing. And what I'm hoping to do in these is start off by looking at the rules at a simple level, looking at the definitions, the correct terminology for each one, and looking at how they can be applied at a very simple level, but then going a little bit deeper to hopefully unpack really what are the responsibilities of each of the boats in any given scenario, and also look to debunk a few sort of common myths that I come across when I am doing my coaching. Throughout this video and hopefully future videos, what I'm going to be referring to is the World Sailing Racing Rules of Sailing. I'm also going to be referring to a casebook. So the World Sailing and the RYA both do a casebook of past protests and the outcomes of those, so they're really useful to get hold of a copy. They're both free downloads if you really want to get an in-depth understanding of the rules. See if you can grab some of those. The rule book is 153 pages and looks a bit meaty. Actually, a lot of that is to deal with things around the racing, protests, fair sailing, drugs. It's got loads in there. For most sailors, you don't need to know the majority of what the book says. The bits that are really important to us are part 2, which is when boats meet. That is from page 15 to 22. These are not big pages, fairly big text, and there's not a huge amount on there, so it's not a lot. There's only, well, rule 10 to rule 22. 12 rules, we can cope with those. The other bit that's really useful to look at is the bit that comes before page 15, which looks at the definitions. Those are going to be useful. And it seems an obvious place to start is to begin with the first rule in that section, part 2, which is rule 10, and that is boats on opposite tacks, so port and starboard. When you look at rule 10, it's quite difficult to look at in isolation, so I'm also going to be looking at rules 14, 15, 16, which is avoiding collisions, acquiring right of way, and changing course. So I'll be touching on those as well. Okay, rule 10 on opposite tacks. So when boats are on opposite tacks, a port tack boat shall keep clear of a starboard tack boat. So there's a few things we need to define in there. First of all, what is port and starboard? So port and starboard, very simply, nautical terms for left and right. Port is left, usually red. Starboard is right, which is denoted by a green colour. Next, what does tack mean? So when a boat is sailing, it will usually have the winds coming across one side or the other. So if the wind is coming over the right hand side of the boat, then it will be on starboard tack, and if the wind is coming over the left hand side of the boat, it will be on port tack. So this leads to things saying such as, if you're on the right, you're in the right. So if you're normally sat on the right hand side of the boat, you'll be on starboard tack. Now the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that if you're sailing downwind or sailing by the lee, the wind won't be coming over the side of the boat, or it might be coming over the same side that the sailor's on. The rules have thought about this, so when you get to a run or sailing by the lee, port and starboard tack is no longer denoted by the side that the wind is coming over, but the opposite side to where the boom is. So the windward side of the boat is then the opposite side to the boat. So hopefully that all makes sense. So looking at a few simple scenarios here, we've got two boats on opposite tacks. The one in green is on starboard tack, the one in red is on port tack. Boat on starboard has right of way, and the boat on port needs to keep clear. Another scenario, we've got something slightly more complicated. Now we've got two boats sailing downwind. But again, have a look which side the sail is on. If the sail is on the left, the boat is on starboard. If the sail is on the right hand side of the boat, then the boat is on port. So we can see here which boat is on starboard tack. The port boat needs to keep clear, so get out of the way. Okay, another scenario, we've got one boat sailing downwind on port tack, another boat coming up behind on starboard. Again, boats on opposite tacks, starboard boat has right of way, the port boat needs to keep clear. On to what each boat needs to do in a port and starboard scenario. So I'm going to start with the boat on port because that's actually a bit simpler than the starboard boat. So quite simply, as a keep clear boat, you need to keep clear. In addition to this, you actually need to make it obvious that you're keeping clear in good time, so the boat on starboard knows that you are going to keep clear, and that is condition dependent. So for example, if you're going to bear away behind the starboard boat, then you need to make it obvious that you're easing your sails and show that you're bearing away. Or quite commonly, a bit of a hail can work, so it's okay, I've seen you, or hold your course is a very common one. Acknowledges that you've seen the boat and you are going to miss them. Right, the starboard boat. Now, as right of way boat, we need to delve into a few other rules here. So if you are on starboard, you still have a bit of an obligation to avoid contact. So you can't go crashing into a boat. And this really applies if it's very obvious that the boat on port can't keep clear, then you should be keeping clear. So maybe they look like they're out of control, really struggling. You can see it's not going to be possible for them to avoid. Then you should take evasive action, protest them. They should do turns. Okay. There's what can you do? What are you allowed to do? And essentially, as a right-of-way boat, you're pretty much allowed to sail where you like. The only caveat to this, or two caveats to this, is when you are changing course, you must give the boat on port room to keep clear. However, if you're approaching them and you change course and the boat moves to keep clear and then you change course again and they have to move to keep clear again, providing they actually have room to keep clear, then you are allowed to keep altering course. There's no rules against that, providing you're on the same leg of the course as the boat on port and you're not sailing upwind and the port tack boat is bearing away to pass you to leeward. Right, let's talk hails. So as the starboard boat, it can be a really good idea to yell starboard to alert a boat on port that you are there, and then they can take evasive action. However, you're not required to. So good idea, but there isn't any rules if you don't do. It's still the port boat's fault if they then crash into you. Right, now let's talk penalties. So if the port boat fails to keep clear and there is contact, then the port boat should be doing a 720. Other examples of infringing this rule is if the starboard boat has to take evasive action because the port boat isn't keeping clear. Again, it's a 720 even without contact. Okay, let's test your knowledge of Rule 10 now. So a few scenarios, quiz coming up. So question 1, blue and pink. Which one is right of way or which one is keep clear? Same scenario, blue, pink. Which one keeps clear now? Okay, number 3. Imagine the scenario. We've got a boat on starboard rounding a windward mark. There's a boat on port still beating up wind to get to the windward mark. The boat on starboard bears away, and as it's bearing away, they immediately make contact with the boat on port. Who is right and who should be doing turns in this scenario? Right, and this one, it's the boat on starboard should be doing turns because they altered course and didn't give the other boat enough room to keep clear. Okay, another scenario. We've got 2 boats sailing upwind on port, about 3 boat lengths or two or 3 boat lengths apart. The boat on port, or the boat down to leeward, yells, "I'm tacking onto starboard," tacks onto starboard, and then makes contact 2 seconds later. Right, and in this scenario, despite the boat being on starboard, when acquiring right of way, they didn't give the other boat enough time and opportunity to keep clear. And even if they shout, "I'm tacking onto starboard," that doesn't count. It's only once they reach starboard or become a starboard tack boat that the other boat needs to start taking action to keep clear. Okay, hopefully there's a bit more information about port and starboard. It gives you a slightly deeper understanding of it. Any comments, please do put them below. I love a bit of a discussion on rules, so if you disagree with anything, do write it below. But one rule, I want you to go and find a rule or a case study that backs up what you're saying. Okay, cheers for now, more to come.